In this episode, we're going to talk about how to get tack-sharp focus in your vlogs or interviews or other videos that you're shooting with your DSLR or video cam. Okay, quick disclosure before we get started, what this video is going to be about and what it's really not about, so we don't waste anybody's time. If you're doing action scenes or something where your actors or your camera are moving, that's a huge topic, and we're not going to be able to cover all of that here. But what we will cover is scenes where you're doing, again, sort of vlogs or sales videos or interviews where your actors are pretty much in one place, whether that be sitting or standing. They can be moving around, of course, but we don't want them moving too much like you would see in an action scene. So just so we didn't waste anyone's time. If you're using a DSLR, they are fantastic cameras. They make great images. They have great sensors, but they're not very good at focusing, autofocusing that is. The autofocus tends to be very, very slow in video mode, and even on the newest generation of cameras, it's still pretty slow, and it's really noisy, so it can create some noise in your footage that you really don't want. So typically what I do is I drop to manual focus. Most video cams tend to do pretty well at autofocus, but every once in a while, some of them will tend to hunt around for focus, and that can be really annoying. So in that case, what can be really helpful as well is dropping into manual focus, set your focus at the start, and then you're good to go for that scene. So to avoid all of these issues, whether you're on a video cam or a DSLR, drop to manual focus, and let's talk about some of the techniques there. Now, before we do that though, if you feel like that's sort of a cop-out or it's kind of lame in some way, consider that most major motion pictures are using cameras where they manually focus. And in fact, they typically have a person that's part of the photography crew that person's main purpose is to pull focus. That's all they do. They pull focus, they mark the spots for the actors to hit their marks, they measure from the lens to those marks, and they're all ready to go when it comes time to do the focusing. There's a separate person that actually operates the camera in terms of setting exposure and actually doing the panning and tilting and moving. So it's not lame, it's actually more sophisticated if you want to think of it in those terms. Now, if you're going to be filming yourself, one thing I typically do is use a proxy. So I go to my mark, which in this case I'm sitting in this chair. I usually use a mic stand, and the nice thing about this mic stand is that it has these threads at the end of it, which are some nice texture that you'll be able to focus on. So I set that right at my eye, that's where I want to get my focus. And once I have that set, I can head back to the camera and actually get the focus. To get focus, what you do is move this box up to a part where you can zoom in to get focus and then focus from there. Now, this is not zooming your lens, this is just zooming the digital image so that you can get it up nice and close and make sure you get your focus right on. Now, if you're shooting a Canon camera with Magic Lantern, you have an even greater number of options. So in this case here, I can show you that, first of all, you have focus peaking. That's the little pixels you see flashing around. And then you can also zoom in, and you also get confirmation in green when you are in focus. So again, the idea here is that you want to zoom in. And this is just a digital zoom. This is not zooming your lens again. Zoom in to a part of your image that has some texture that you can focus on, get it perfectly in focus, and then you zoom back out to your regular image and you can shoot from there. One other consideration in getting tack-sharp focus is that you have to have enough depth of field to keep your entire actor or actors in focus. Now, what that means is you're going to need to get your aperture setting or your iris setting to a point where it can keep everything in focus. And typically, I start at f3.5 or f4 when I'm shooting indoors with my studio lights. If I have more light than that, say I have also, in addition to my studio lights, I have light coming in a window, daylight, I will typically use maybe f5.6 or f8, depending on how much light I have. So those are considerations. Again, just a starting point, I would say start with f3.5 or f4. Probably don't go lower than that to f2.8 or wider, because you are going to have a hard time keeping everything in focus. You may have the actor's eyes in focus, but their chin may be out of focus, just to give an example. If you do increase your aperture to say f4, f5.6, f8, you may need to increase your ISO. So in those cases, for example, if you have a base ISO of 100 on your camera, you may need to up that to maybe 400 or 600 or 800, depending on what your camera offers. There's a risk with that your video will get a little bit grainier, noisier, and so that's just a trade-off that you'll have to consider when you're trying to get that tack-sharp focus. Again, typically in this situation where I've got my studio lights, no other light sources, I will typically shoot at f4 on my camera or f3.5, somewhere in that range. Now, there is potentially an easier way to do this as well. You can control your camera from a laptop. So if you're shooting yourself for a vlog or something like that, then if you use your laptop connected via USB cable to your camera, you can control your camera from your laptop, and that makes focusing yourself a whole lot easier. Now, on the Canon side, it's easy because the Canon cameras all come with the software to control your camera. All you need is a long enough USB cable to get that from your laptop to your camera. I would recommend Monoprice, which is a great place to get all sorts of cables. They have 15-foot long USB cables, and I use one from time to time. It works beautifully. That's at monoprice.com. Now, if you're on a Nikon camera, on the other hand, it's a little more complicated. You have to buy the software either from Nikon or from a third party. Nikon software costs about $180, and I haven't bought it, I haven't used it, and don't plan to. There are third-party ones that are a lot cheaper that you can use. I just don't even use those either. Man, it's just, this technique that I just showed you works great, and I don't bother with the software. Thanks for checking in for this episode. I hope you found that helpful. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, and we will get you more videos on how to improve your lighting and your sound. Talk to you soon.